I don't think their chickens in their little outbuilding fared so well. So that's not a happy homecoming. Alan, we know you'll put a lot of this together. There's a lot we still haven't seen, and we'll see at 6 o'clock. And grab a bite, and thanks for stopping in before you...
Long time. Homes and farms were rendered tiny islands in a sea of water. Only things taken to high ground were saved, like this Highways Department equipment. The BC rail line will be closed indefinitely. The company hasn't even considered how to clean up this mess. Some hunters and campers were marooned by major washouts north of Pemberton. Some had been stuck for days.
How long have you been here now?
Well, this is our second day, I think, yeah.
This all happened on Sunday night?
Yeah, Sunday night.
What was going through your mind when you saw this water coming at you?
Try to get out of here pretty quick.
Those who live on high ground above Pemberton were fortunate. Many of them played host to the less fortunate. Annette Blakey cooks breakfast for 40 people, many of them strangers who had lost nearly everything they owned to the rising waters of the Lillooet River.
Have you lost basically everything?
I don't know, the basement's flooded for sure, and I don't know about the upper story. I hope not.
The Pemberton United Church, now known as Noah's Ark, is a temporary home to children whose parents work frantically to save whatever can be saved.
What do you think of all the flooding?
Well, I don't really like it because it wrecked my dad's car and a whole bunch of other stuff.
The boat is the most useful mode of travel in the Pemberton Meadow area. These houses have been floated off their foundations by the rising water. For many, this was their first time home in 24 hours, and some had driven their vehicles away. A new housing subdivision with houses built higher than the others to avoid flooding is also hard hit. Some families had moved whatever they could to upper stories in their houses, and now they're worried about flooding there. But there is some relief that things are not as bad as they might be.
We left about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I guess, and went to stay with some friends up at Worcester, our friend's place at Worcester, and then came back this morning.
The water's a lot higher than when you left?
Oh, yeah, it was just starting to come over the fields up here when we left. Yeah, you could still drive out.
So you got your vehicle out?
Oh, yeah.
Except for my motorcycle, which is down there.
And a tractor.
And a tractor?
Yeah.
What about your chickens? Have you had a look at them?
They're gone, I'm sure. Yeah.
What?
The owners of some of these homes feel the flooding has been largely unnecessary, and the damage could have been limited if the authorities had acted quickly enough.
5 miles south of the town of Pemberton, the highway was partially washed out, and the town itself was completely cut off last night, except for a couple of boat patrols.
We've got approximately 5 feet of water here on the corner, crossing the road. That's the only road in, and the only road out of this town.
We've got the tent. Mr. Fernandez, it sounds like you've got one big ugly job up there.
Yes, we have.
What can you describe what it looks like right now?
Right now we have about 60% of the valley covered in water. What we have is a 300 feet section of the dike has disappeared. And we now have the Lillooet River running through the downtown area of Pemberton.
So you've got water going through stores and houses in downtown Pemberton?
Yes, we have.
Any idea how much damage, how extensive this is? How many homes?
We have right now, we have 177 homes that are damaged. We have 49 homes that have water in them. We don't have a damage count on them. We have 21 homes on the Indian Reserve that now have water in them. And we have a high school that has 5 feet of water in it.
How are you managing? I mean, Pemberton isn't a huge community. Where are you finding all the people to help you?
Just about the whole community is involved in this.
What are you doing? What are they doing?
Right now, we have 50 volunteers out there working on evacuation. We are evacuating with 9 small boats and motors and moving people around, and then we have backup crews who are keeping the food going and keeping the soup hot for us and the coffee. And we have several rescuers out with vehicles blocking off the highway and assisting people as the water rises.
Where are you taking the people?
We've been moving them up to the hill and to the United Church there, and then processing them and putting them into other private homes up on the hill.
Is there any sense of panic?
No.
No, there must be fear.
Well, you always have that when you got something this big.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trawlers return her community to the state it was in before it was ravaged by floods this weekend. Shirley Henry says she'll be going after the provincial government for the aid as soon as possible. The Weather Office is predicting more rain as the floodwaters continue to rise and families continue to be driven from their homes in the Pemberton Valley. And further south near Lyons Bay, a flood protection construction is falling victim to the weather. We have 2 reports.
The floodwaters here are higher than they were yesterday. The dikes, which were supposed to withstand the highest waters ever recorded, have broken in more than 10 places. And disaster coordinators estimate that more than 190 homes are underwater. In some places, only the roofs are showing. 50 more homes are threatened by floodwaters which continue to rise.
The river cut through the bank here, and it dropped a bunch of logs, took the fences with it, and it gouged out the field. It took all the topsoil off this year's potato field. It's gone down the road. What are we going to do with this next piece of land? But the top is off. We started here with nothing 29 years ago, and it looks like nature wants us to get out here with nothing again.
Pemberton Mayor Shirley Henry did not know how extensive the flooding was until First News took her up for a bird's-eye view. She was going to ask the provincial government for emergency aid in the millions of dollars, but now she says she'll ask for even more.
Shirley, you know these people well. How do you think they're going to take this?
I think that they'll pull together and do as best they can. They've got terrific experienced people in the Pemberton Valley.
What do you think they'll be asking of the Premier?
Certainly for some help with their financial loss, you know, to their personal possessions and their crops and their animals.
Any idea what this is going to be costing you?
Millions. Last time I did millions and millions, and I would say millions and millions and millions. There's no way I can estimate now.
Few residents were able to get to their homes, which they had abandoned last night. This truck barely made it over this river, which was once a road. Volunteer Fire Chief Tom Carey returned to secure his front door and rescue a neighbor's pregnant dog.
What's the condition of your house right now?
Oh, good. I guess I've been inside. I won't go in there.
How many feet of water is in there?
Oh, it was up to... Must have been a foot or 2 on the floor.
Some residents, however, have to wait for the waters to subside before they can see what damage has been done.
You spent the night in a tent last night?
Yes, I found the highest place that I could find, and I decided that was the best place for me. Yeah.
Okay, are you going to be able to get to your house today?
It's dangerous. I wouldn't attempt it. The water's rushing like a river.
Work crews gave up trying to loosen the logjam around this bridge yesterday. According to one worker, the only thing holding the bridge now is a prayer. British Columbia Railway crews have not even attempted to clean up yesterday's 15-car derailment as the waters continue to shift the wreckage.
Although this area has had more than the usual amount of rainfall, residents say there should not be this much water here. Some locals speculate that a warm October may have melted a few of the old glaciers. But the real fear here is that the rainy season has not yet started. And unless the provincial government steps in to repair some of the dikes, damage here will only get worse.
By daybreak, residents could see how bad it is. The people in this trailer court were evacuated yesterday. They live in the lowlands and were told it was coming. From the air, though, you can see there's not much that can be considered high ground.
Mass devastation of water from one end of the valley to the other, except for the small area in the village that's on high ground.
The water has almost completely swallowed some houses. The high school won't be open for a while. People are just trying to keep their spirits up.
What part you make it from? Went way car place and the washing car right in the water, and the dog was sitting in the deep freeze. But it was underwater. You're underwater too, eh? Oh, yeah, all of it. Right through there. Popped up the doors.
I just put my animals there. I don't know if they have it in there. I'm going to lose the whole house, but not my animals.
How deep was Silver Road? Is just 2 feet on it. That's all. Just 2 feet.
4 o'clock yesterday, the water started running quite fast down the road, so we decided at 4 o'clock we better start walking out, and as we were walking out, the water was right up to our waist. So we waited out and we stayed in town last night at some friend's place who has a lot of people staying there also.
Livestock has been moved to higher ground at the Mount Currie Indian Reserve. They're watching the water still rush into the center of their village. So far, it's not too bad. What they're worried about is flooding on their farms.
There'll be no hay this year, eh? Like the hay that's in the barn is getting all soaked and it'll be all moldy. So people are going to have to sell their cattle, I guess.
This is potato growing country. Farmers say their crops are ruined. And while no one has figured out how many dollars all this devastation will cost, some are attaching blame.
Hold them responsible for the stupid actions that they made on this goddamn thing. Taking that trestle out and put those freaking culverts in there.
BC Rail removed the trestle from here a few years ago. Now the water has to flow through culverts under the tracks, and the locals are saying the culverts can't handle the flow.
So now the railway dam itself, the railway track, acts like a dam. The water doesn't go too fast enough, it builds up. So all those people in behind the dam, as the water builds up, it is a man-made lake.
How's it been for people up there? They lost a lot?
Oh, we've lost everything.
Oh, yeah, our house is gone. I mean, you're not going to be able to fix it. There's 4 feet of water inside the house.
Last
on the main
night
floor.
it was even higher, and it was just up to the top.
BC Rail has problems of its own. Crews are trying to fix 3 washouts north of Whistler. The worst just outside Pemberton. This train derailed yesterday. Its cargo is still spilled across the tracks. But the rest of the cleanup in the area will have to wait. Since Saturday, they've had 8 inches of rain, and another inch is expected tonight. So the people in the area will have to look for higher ground once again. Wayne Williams, CBC News, Pemberton.
Pemberton, BC boat. The main street is now a river. Pemberton is the town hardest hit by what some are calling the area's worst flooding in 40 years. Wayne Williams reports.
The flooding that began yesterday got worse today. 150 millimeters of rain in 3 days, and the Lillooet River spilled its banks. Much of the village of Pemberton, 150 kilometers north of Vancouver, is underwater.
Mass devastation of water from one end of the valley to the other, except for the small area in the village that's on high ground.
This trailer court was evacuated yesterday. Homes have been almost swallowed, and it'll be a while before the high school reopens. People are just trying to keep their spirits up.
We got waterfront property anyways. We should have felt pretty good.
Waters in the Pemberton area started to recede again today, but then after doing that yesterday, the flooding became even more widespread overnight. More families were forced to flee their homes. Some of them returned today in boats to salvage belongings. And then came the anger over why a lot of this is happening. And for a while, there was talk of dynamiting a section of the BC rail line to drain the valley. Alan Edwards updates the situation.
The water in Pemberton rose through the night as homeowners and shopkeepers worked to salvage whatever they could. Some were more successful than others. At first light, the extent of the flooding in the Pemberton Valley surpassed even the worst fears. In some areas, the water had risen up to 10 feet. The BC rail line will be closed indefinitely. The company hasn't even considered how to clean up this mess. The Pemberton United Church, now known as Noah's Ark, is a temporary home to children whose parents work frantically to save whatever can be saved.
Your chickens here. Have we had a look at them? They're gone, I'm sure. Yeah. Well.
The owners of some of these homes feel the flooding has been largely unnecessary, and the damage could have been limited if the authorities had acted quickly enough. The lake that now covers Pemberton Meadows is being held back by 2 man-made dikes. The highway is one of the barriers to the water's escapement. The railway is the second barrier. Dynamiting the rail line may be the answer.
If the BC Rail had a bridge down here at the corner of the track years ago, which would handle this whole flow. They took the bridge out and put culverts in. They were totally inadequate. Okay, so there's dam number 1. That's what's flooding my house, and everybody up around the high school area. They're all being flooded because of that dam there. If that bridge was left in, and another bridge under the highway down here to let it through, then this water would all drain off. Right now the river has dropped about 2 feet, and yet the water in my house is still up to the floor. It hasn't moved.
Some homeowners want to take matters into their own hands to save their homes after failing to get the attention of those in authority.
Even as late as yesterday afternoon, several of us approached the people in charge and told them to blow that up or dig it up and to take out the highway and get it moving, but they bungled that one.
Pictures of the area before the flooding are being reviewed by elected officials in formulating an emergency relief plan.
Right now we're looking for some financial aid from the provincial government to remedy the damage that we've had in the area to our dikes and to our properties in the village and surrounding area, and maybe some assistance to prevent further problems with our flooding in the area.
The Premier asked me to come up, and I brought Department of the Environment officials with me who are going to assess the whole situation, but I think, as far as I can see, everything's under control.
But while all the talking goes on, the threat of even more rainfall means the situation could worsen in the Pemberton Valley as displaced property owners brace themselves for the possibility of even more trouble.
Larry Allen is going home. Like everyone else, he's taking a small boat to get to his property on the Pemberton Meadows.
Where's the road from here if we get the perspective? Road's over along just beyond these trees. You can see a few sticking out of the water over here, and the road's against that. And then it follows along up the line of trees and into the high school. The high school, it looks like it's under 4 or 5 feet of water.
Larry Allen finds the same situation at his home. He has lost most of what is inside, as well as 30 head of cattle. But he will try to save what he can.
How's it look? Take a look. It's right underwater. Are you able to save anything? Well, I'm going to try to save this if I can. And whatever, it's just one hang of a mess.
What was once a residential street is now a torrent. Most of the pavement has washed away, forcing the evacuation of more than 100 families. The return home means a portage. This is higher ground which escaped the rising river. But it remains sealed off. Any provisions must be brought in by boat or helicopter, and neighbors help each other.
Yeah, I think about here. Sure.
Mike Edwards is luckier than most.
Took 3 years to build that.
How's it? What's the state of it now?
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Where? Well, the main floor is pretty well ruined. You know, the water's obviously been about 2 feet higher. It's full of slime and grit. And the water's running through it right now.
I got cabbages, kuba saw, sauerkraut, everything. Potatoes, eh?
Is you going to be able to save any of it?
Oh,
That's all.
I'll have to wait till next spring, I guess, and have it, you know.
How long have you been living around here?
Over 30 years.
Never seen anything like this before? I never seen anything like this before in my whole entire life.
What are you going to do now?
I'm going to stay here. Matter of fact, I'm even going to get buried here. To hell with it.
The rain let up during the night. The snow melt slowed on nearby mountaintops, and flood levels in the Pemberton Valley began to drop. Not that it made much difference. The damage was done.
The chickens are drowning. Got the mule up on the front yard. It's almost in the house. The cows.